Check his left arm.
The little girl warned, pointing a small finger at her father's locked shoulder.
That's why he can't hold me. He's bleeding inside.
The ambient temperature of Webern County Medical's pediatric emergency room was strictly maintained at a brisk 66 degrees. It was cold enough to keep the night shift awake, and cold enough that parents usually asked for warm blankets within 10 minutes of arriving. Maya Lin, 32 years old and 6 hours into a brutal trauma shift, noticed the sweat first. She stood just outside the curtain of bed 4, holding a tablet with a newly populated chart. Thorne Mia, age 6. Minor abrasions and a mild laceration to the right knee from a bicycle accident. It was a standard low-priority pediatric intake, but the scene inside the curtain didn't match the chart. The little girl was sitting on the edge of the examination table, her small face streaked with tears, her denim jacket dusted with dirt. She was crying, not a loud, frantic wail, but a quiet, miserable sobbing. She kept reaching her small hands out toward the man standing at the foot of the bed. The man was her father. He was easily 6'2", built with the dense, functional muscle of a man who did violence for a living. He wore faded tactical cargo pants and a dark green long-sleeved combat shirt zipped entirely up to his throat despite the indoor setting. But he wasn't holding his daughter. He was standing exactly 2 feet away from the mattress. His posture was rigidly upright. His weight subtly shifted entirely onto his right leg. Both of his arms hung straight down at his sides. His left arm in particular looked locked, pressed tightly against his ribs as if pinned there by invisible gravity.
Daddy.
Mia sniffled, leaning forward.
It stings.
The man's jaw jumped. A heavy bead of sweat tracked down his temple, cutting through the harsh fluorescent light. In a room that felt like a refrigerator, he looked like he was standing in a desert.
"I know, kid,"
he said. His voice was a low, gravelly rasp, entirely devoid of the high-pitched soothing tones most parents used in the ER.
"Sit back. Don't slide off the paper."
He didn't step forward. He didn't lift a hand to wipe her tears. He just stood there, breathing in shallow, measured intervals, watching her cry like a spectator. Maya's jaw tightened. In her 6 years as an ER nurse, she had seen every type of parent. Over-anxious mothers, absent fathers, and the ones who treated their children like miniature soldiers who weren't allowed to show weakness. She immediately placed this man in the latter category. Another hard-case military guy who viewed a crying 6-year-old as a failed inspection. She took a breath, adjusted her stethoscope around her neck, and pulled the curtain back. Maya slipped past the curtain, pasting a warm, practiced smile on her face for the little girl.
"Hi there."
Maya said, her voice dropping to that calm, steady register she reserved for pediatric traumas.
"I'm Maya. I hear you had an argument with a bicycle and the bicycle won."
Mia gave a tiny, watery hiccup of a laugh. Maya glanced at the man. Up close, the sheer size of him was intimidating, but it was his absolute stillness that set her on edge.
"And you must be Dad?"
"Captain Thorne."
He answered. The words were clipped, carrying the unmistakable cadence of a man used to giving orders and having them instantly obeyed.
"Just need the knee cleaned and wrapped so we can clear out."
Maya's smile didn't reach her eyes this time.
"We'll make sure she's taken care of, Captain."
She pulled a rolling stool to the edge of the bed and snapped on a pair of blue nitrile gloves. As she uncapped a bottle of sterile saline, Mia tensed her small shoulders, drawing up to her ears.
Daddy.
Mia whispered, extending her right hand toward him.
Hold my hand.
Maya paused, waiting for the natural instinct of any parent to kick in. She expected him to step forward to offer his fingers to brush the hair out of his daughter's face. Instead, Jax Thorne physically recoiled. It was only half a step backward, a minute shift of his boots, but in the confined space of the ER bay, the rejection was deafening.
"You're fine, Mia,"
Jax said. His voice sounded strained, forced through a tight throat.
"Keep your hands in your lap. Be brave."
Maya clamped her back teeth together. Unbelievable, she thought. She applied the saline-soaked gauze to the scraped knee. Mia whimpered, but dutifully buried her hands in her lap, trying desperately to be the brave soldier her father demanded. While Maya worked, her clinical instincts began to run a quiet secondary assessment of the man looming behind her. He was sweating through the collar of his tactical shirt. His skin had a waxy grayish pallor underneath a fading tan. But it was his breathing that caught her attention. It was rapid and shallow, maybe 22 breaths a minute. He was splinting, restricting the expansion of his own chest. And that left arm hadn't moved a single millimeter. He wasn't just cold, he was guarding something.
"All done?"
Maya said softly, taping down the final edge of the bandage on Mia's knee. She stood up and turned to face Jax, her clipboard in hand, deciding to push the issue.
She did great. She's ready to go. You can pick her up now, Captain. You're free to go, Captain.
Maya said, holding out the discharge paperwork.
You can carry her out. The local anesthetic on the knee will wear off in an hour, so she shouldn't walk on it just yet.
Jax stared at the paperwork. He didn't reach for it. Instead, he took a heavy, deliberate step toward the bed. He leaned over, attempting to hook his right arm behind his daughter's back to scoop her up one-handed, completely favoring his left side. It was an incredibly awkward maneuver. Mia instinctively reached up for his neck to steady herself, her small hand brushing against his left shoulder. Jax flinched. It was a violent, involuntary muscle spasm that rocked his entire frame. He immediately stepped back his breath, hitching audibly in the quiet room.
Just walk Mia.
He rasped his voice, dropping an octave completely devoid of breath.
You can walk on your heel. Come on. We're leaving.
Maya felt a surge of genuine anger.
Captain Thorne, she has a fresh wound. She needs to be carried.
She's fine.
He snapped the first real crack in his rigid composure. His chest heaved once rapidly.
She's tough.
Mia didn't slide off the table. Instead, the little girl reached out and grabbed a handful of Maya's blue scrub top. She tugged hard enough to make the nurse look down. Mia's brown eyes were wide-filled with a quiet, solemn understanding that no 6-year-old should possess.
Check his left arm.
The little girl warned, her voice barely a whisper in the cold room. Maya froze.
What?
Check his left arm.
Mia repeated, pointing a small finger at her father's locked shoulder.
That's why he can't hold me. He's bleeding inside.
The room seemed to stop. Maya's gaze snapped from the child to the father. All of a sudden, the pieces realigned. The coldness, the rigid posture, the heavy sweating in a freezing room, the absolute refusal to use his left side, the rapid, shallow breathing. He wasn't a toxic father withholding affection. He was a man actively compensating for massive physical trauma. Jax's face went completely ashen.
Mia, stop.
He commanded, though the authority in his voice was unraveling. He looked at Maya, his dark eyes flashing with a desperate defensive panic.
Don't listen to her. We're leaving. Now.
He tried to step around the bed toward the curtain. Maya dropped her clipboard on the mattress and stepped squarely into his path, blocking the exit.
Get out of the way!
Jax set his voice a low, dangerous rumble.
Or what?
Maya countered, planting her feet, not moving an inch.
You'll push past me with your good arm while you drop your daughter. You're tachycardic, Captain. You're sweating through your shirt in a 66-degree room, and you're guarding your left side so hard your spine is misaligned.
I said we are leaving.
If you walk out those doors carrying a 6-year-old while actively concealing a major hemorrhage or infection, I am legally obligated to call hospital security to stop your vehicle.
Maya said, her voice dropping into a register of pure, unyielding steel.
And then I call Child Protective Services. You are in no condition to drive.
That was the kill shot. The mention of CPS drained whatever aggressive fight was left in him. Jax stopped. He looked over at Mia, who was watching him with wide, tearful eyes, and then he closed his own. The rigid tension went out of his shoulders. He swayed slightly suddenly, looking less like a towering wall of muscle and more like a heavy structure about to collapse. He sank onto the rolling stool Maya had just vacated, his breathing growing visibly harsher as his adrenaline began to crash. Maya didn't ask for permission this time. She grabbed a pair of heavy-duty trauma shears from the counter.
Hold still.
She ordered softly. She slid the blunt edge of the shears under the collar of his tactical shirt and cut downward, slicing through the thick, tear-resistant fabric along the left shoulder and bicep. As the fabric peeled away, the smell hit her first, a sickening heavy odor of severe localized infection. Maya actually gasped, her hand freezing on the shears. Underneath the shirt, Jax's upper arm and shoulder were tightly bound in black, waterproof tactical tape. The skin visible around the edges of the tape wasn't just red. It was angry, violently inflamed, and swollen to nearly twice its normal size. Dark, ugly streaks of erythema were already crawling up his neck and across his collarbone. The heat radiating off his skin felt like a furnace against the back of her gloved hand. He hadn't been acting cold to his daughter. He had been keeping his distance because if a 60-pound child had thrown her arms around that shoulder, the agony would have made him black out. Maya looked up at his pale, sweating face, her previous judgment turning to absolute ash.
Captain,
She whispered.
what did you do?
Jax didn't answer right away. He kept his eyes fixed on the linoleum floor, his massive chest rising and falling in shallow, painful hitches.
I packed it.
He finally rasped the words, catching in his dry throat.
Hemostatic gauze. Flushed it with iodine. Sealed it.
With tactical tape?
Maya said, her voice stripped of all previous anger, replaced by a quiet, horrified awe. She pulled a rolling tray closer and began opening sterile saline and prep pads.
Captain, this is a deep tissue puncture. It's severely infected. How long has it been like this?
5 days?
Maya's hands paused. 5 days of carrying this kind of agony in secret.
Why didn't you go to the base hospital?
Jax lifted his head. The guarded, impenetrable mask he had worn since walking into her ER was entirely gone. Beneath it was a man drowning in exhaustion and quiet terror. He looked over at Mia, who was watching them with her small hands folded in her lap.
Because if I log a combat-limiting injury right now, it triggers a medical evaluation board.
Jax said softly, ensuring Mia wouldn't hear the break in his voice.
The last time I was hospitalized, my wife packed her bags. She said being married to a broken soldier was too heavy. She left.
Maya felt a sudden sharp ache in her own chest. She reached out her gloved hands, infinitely gentler now, and began carefully peeling back the edge of the rigid black tape. Jax stifled a low groan, his jaw locking.
Sorry.
She murmured.
I know. Breathe through it.
If they board me out...
Jax continued, his voice trembling as the tape pulled at inflamed skin.
I have no civilian career lined up. No safety net. If I'm an unemployed disabled single father, her mother's lawyers will drag us straight into family court. They'll take her away from me. I can't...
He swallowed hard, a fresh bead of sweat dropping from his chin.
I can't lose her.
Maya stopped pulling the tape. She looked at his pale, stricken face, understanding the full, crushing weight of his arithmetic. He was trading his arm, maybe his life, to keep his daughter.
You aren't going to lose her.
Maya said. Her tone wasn't clinical anymore. It was a fierce, quiet promise. She placed a warm, steadying hand on his good shoulder.
But Jax, you are going to lose this arm if we don't act right now.
The last strip of tactical tape came free with a sickening wet sound. Underneath the makeshift dressing, the reality of the injury was far worse than Maya had anticipated. It was a jagged, deep tissue puncture wound just below the anterior deltoid, likely shrapnel or environmental debris. The hemostatic gauze Jax had packed inside was crusted and dark, but the surrounding tissue was actively dying. The skin was hot tight and mottled with dark purple. Angry, branching red streaks of lymphangitis were visibly creeping up the side of his neck toward his jawline. Maya didn't say a word. She moved with the practiced, hyper-focused speed of a seasoned trauma nurse. She grabbed a pulse oximeter and clipped it to Jax's right index finger, then rapidly secured a blood pressure cuff around his uninjured right bicep. The monitor above the bed immediately began to chime the numbers, flashing in furious red font. Heart rate 138. Blood pressure 88/52. Oxygen saturation dropping to 91%. Maya grabbed a temporal thermometer and swiped it across his forehead. 103.6 degrees.
Captain Jax, look at me.
Maya commanded, her voice cutting through the sterile hum of the ER. Jax blinked. The dark, intense focus in his eyes was suddenly gone, replaced by a glassy, unfocused haze. The massive dump of adrenaline that had kept him upright and functioning for 5 excruciating days had finally evaporated, leaving his body completely defenseless against the systemic infection. He swayed on the stool. His gaze drifted past Maya, landing on his daughter.
Mia.
Jax slurred, his gravelly voice dropping to a weak rasp.
Turn around, Peanut. Look. Look at the wall. Don't look at Daddy.
Mia's lower lip trembled, but the 6-year-old dutifully turned around on the exam table, facing the blank hospital wall, her small hands gripping the edge of the mattress. Maya slammed the palm of her hand against the blue emergency call button on the wall panel.
I need a trauma surgical consult to Bay 4 Stat 000.
Maya yelled into the intercom, her voice echoing down the corridor.
I have a code sepsis. Bring a 1-liter bolus of lactated ringers, broad-spectrum IV antibiotics, and a crash cart. Now. Since all this.
Hearing the chaos, Jax tried to stand up, his massive frame uncoordinated and heavy.
No admission.
He mumbled, his panic overriding his failing organs.
Just clean it out. I have to take her home.
Maya planted both hands on his right shoulder and shoved him backward.
You are going into septic shock, Captain. Your organs are preparing to shut down. You are not going anywhere.
Admission.
The words seemed to echo in Jax's fevered mind, cutting through the heavy fog of the infection. His eyes, previously dull and glassy, suddenly flared with a wild, desperate panic. The sepsis was already crossing the blood-brain barrier, triggering the acute confusion and delirium that accompanied end-stage septic shock. But his primal instinct as a father remained fiercely intact.
No.
Jax choked out. His right hand, thick with muscle and trembling violently, reached across his chest to grab the IV line Maya had just secured.
I can't stay. If I go under, if they take me to surgery, they'll call her mother's lawyers. They'll put Mia in the system.
He pulled at the plastic tubing, ready to rip the needle straight out of his own vein. Maya didn't call for security. She didn't press the emergency button again. Instead, she dropped the saline flush, leaned over the bed, and clamped both of her hands over his right wrist, pinning it to the mattress. He was massively stronger than her, but the infection had hollowed him out.
Jax, stop.
Maya ordered, leaning her face down until she was inches from his.
Look at me. Look directly at my eyes.
Jax panted, his chest heaving, fighting the restraint for one terrifying second before his unfocused gaze finally locked onto hers.
I'm not calling CPS.
Maya said, her voice dropping into a fierce, unwavering whisper.
I am not calling her mother. I am keeping her right here, in this department, with me.
Jax stared at her, his breathing ragged, his skin burning beneath her grip.
You can't...
I am the charge nurse on this floor tonight.
Maya said, her grip on his wrist softening, turning into a grounding hold.
What I say goes. Nobody is taking your daughter. She is going to sit at my desk, and she is going to eat graham crackers, and she is going to wait for her dad. I swear it to you, Jax. I will protect her, but you have to let me save you first.
For a long, suspended second, the heart monitor screamed in the background. Jax looked from Maya's fierce, honest eyes to his daughter's trembling shoulders. Slowly, his fingers uncurled from the IV tubing. He surrendered. The exact second Jax surrendered, the infection won. It was as if his stubborn, desperate will had been the only physical structure holding him upright. When he finally let go of the IV line, the last reserves of his adrenaline evaporated. His eyes rolled back. His knees, thick as tree trunks, suddenly buckled inward. It wasn't a graceful faint. It was the terrifying dead-weight collapse of a 220-pound man. Maya lunged forward, catching him by the right shoulder, throwing her entire body weight backward to guide his fall. She barely managed to steer him onto the mattress before his legs gave out completely. He hit the bed hard, his massive frame going entirely limp. Above them, the monitor didn't just chime, it began to emit a continuous, piercing red alarm. His blood pressure was plummeting past the point of sustaining consciousness. The septic shock had fully taken hold.
Daddy.
Mia screamed. It was a sound of pure, unadulterated childhood terror. The little girl scrambled backward on the examination table, her hands covering her mouth as the ER doors flew open. A trauma surgeon and 2 assisting nurses rushed into the bay, pushing a heavy red crash cart ahead of them. The small space instantly became a chaotic blur of shouting voices tearing plastic and glaring lights.
Push the ringers wide open.
The surgeon barked, snapping on sterile gloves.
Where's the source?
Left anterior deltoid deep puncture necrotic margins.
And there we go.
Seems Ida.
Maya shouted back over the din. But before she grabbed the waiting IV bags, Maya moved. She didn't ignore the screaming child. Keeping her promise, she stepped directly between Mia and the bed, completely blocking the little girl's line of sight to her unconscious father. Maya scooped Mia up in one swift motion, pressing the child's face firmly against her own shoulder.
I've got you.
Maya whispered fiercely into Mia's hair, carrying her 3 steps away and setting her down securely behind a heavy, opaque privacy screen in the corner of the room.
Look at my eyes, Mia. Right here. I am going to help him now. You stay behind this screen. I promise he's not alone.
Mia sobbed, her tiny hands gripping the edge of the screen, but she nodded. Satisfied the child was shielded from the nightmare, Maya spun around and dove back into the fray, fighting to pull the father back from the edge.
He's severely hypertensive.
The trauma surgeon, Dr. Eris, set his fingers pressing hard against Jax's uninjured carotid artery.
Pressure is tanking. We don't have time to wait for an OR transport. We need source control right now, or he's going to code.
Maya didn't waste a fraction of a second arguing.
Setting up for bedside I&D with possible fasciotomy.
She ripped open a sterile tray, moving with the practiced, hyper-efficient muscle memory of a seasoned trauma nurse. She splashed brown betadine over the swollen, mottled skin of Jax's left shoulder, painting the necrotic margins.
I need a 10-blade scalpel and deep suction.
Eris commanded, taking his position at the head of the bed.
Push another liter of fluids and get the norepinephrine running. We have to keep his pressure up while I open this.
Maya handed him the scalpel and grabbed the rigid plastic suction wand. Eris made the incision. He cut deep into the inflamed tissue just below the anterior deltoid. The moment the scalpel breached the fascia, the localized pressure holding the infection inside the muscle compartment gave way.
Suction now.
Eris ordered. Maya moved in perfectly in sync with the surgeon. She didn't flinch at the sight or the smell of the severe infection. She focused entirely on clearing the field, suctioning away the purulent fluid and dark clotted blood, so Eris could see exactly what he was doing.
Look at this.
Eris murmured, using forceps to pull a tiny jagged piece of dark metal from the depths of the wound.
Shrapnel. He left a fragment in there when he packed it. It's been festering for nearly a week. How is he even alive?
He's a seal,
Maya said tightly, her eyes fixed on the cardiac monitor.
and he's a father.
As the massive pocket of infection was drained and the pressure on his localized vascular system was relieved, the high-dose, broad-spectrum antibiotics finally had a chance to work. Slowly, agonizingly, the furious red numbers on the monitor began to stabilize.
Blood pressure is coming up.
Maya called out, feeling the first real wave of relief wash over her.
92/60. Heart rate dropping to 118.
Good. We stabilized him. Wrap it tight, Maya. Let's get him upstairs to the ICU.
Eris packed the open wound with sterile saline-soaked gauze. Maya tied off the dressing. Before she did anything else, she looked over her shoulder, past the chaos of the trauma bay, to the corner of the room. The privacy screen hadn't moved. Mia had stayed exactly where she was told. The rhythmic, steady hum of the ICU monitor was the first thing that pulled Jax out of the dark. It wasn't the frantic, high-pitched scream of the emergency room, but a slow, reassuring pulse. He opened his eyes. The room lights were dimmed. His left arm felt incredibly heavy, immobilized in a thick clinical sling and packed tightly with surgical dressings. But the fiery, agonizing pressure that had consumed him for 5 days was completely gone. In its place was a dull, heavily medicated ache. He turned his head against the pillow. A few feet away, bathed in the soft glow of a telemetry screen, was a vinyl hospital couch. Mia was curled up on it, fast asleep. Someone had taken off her dusty sneakers and tucked a warmed cotton blanket around her shoulders. Standing at the foot of his bed, reviewing his chart on a tablet, was Maya. She had changed out of her ruined scrub top and was wearing a fresh navy blue tunic.
You kept her here.
Jax rasped. His throat felt like cracked earth. Maya looked up, her professional focus immediately softening. She set the tablet down and walked quietly to his bedside, checking the flow of his IV line.
I told you I would. She had graham crackers and apple juice. She fell asleep about an hour ago.
Jax closed his eyes for a brief second. A profound, grounding wave of relief washed over his exhausted body.
Thank you.
Maya paused, her hand resting lightly on the metal bed rail.
Jax, I need to apologize to you.
He opened his eyes, frowning slightly.
For what you saved my arm. Probably my life.
When I first walked into that trauma bay,
Maya said, her voice dropping to a quiet, steady whisper.
I judged you. I thought you were just another rigid, cold military guy who wouldn't even hold his crying kid. I didn't see the agony you were carrying. I should have looked closer.
Jax let out a slow, tired breath. He looked at her compassionate eyes, realizing the defensive armor he usually wore simply wasn't necessary in this room.
You saw exactly what I wanted everyone to see.
Jax said softly.
You're just the first person who refused to let me get away with it.
A soft rustle of cotton broke the quiet. On the vinyl couch, Mia shifted, rubbing her eyes with the back of her small hand. She sat up, the blanket slipping off her shoulders, and blinked against the dim light. When she saw her father watching her, her breath hitched. She remembered the chaos in the emergency room, the blaring alarms, and the terrifying way his massive frame had simply collapsed to the floor.
Daddy.
She whispered, her voice trembling.
Right here, Peanut.
Jax said softly. Mia slid off the couch. She approached the hospital bed with careful, hesitant steps, eyeing the heavy bandages and the thick blue sling immobilizing his left side. She stopped a foot away from the mattress, remembering how he had flinched, and backed away from her earlier that night. She didn't want to hurt him again. Jax didn't wait for her to ask. He reached out with his thick, uninjured right arm.
Come here.
He murmured, his gravelly voice cracking. Mia scrambled up onto the edge of the mattress. Jax hooked his right arm around her small waist and pulled her securely against his right ribs. He buried his face in her messy hair, closing his eyes as a long, shuddering breath left his chest. It was the fierce, desperate embrace of a father who had spent weeks terrified of losing her, finally allowed to hold on. Mia wrapped her arms carefully around his neck, instinctively avoiding his left shoulder entirely.
You're not cold anymore.
She whispered.
No.
Jax said, kissing the top of her head.
Maya fixed it. I'm sorry I couldn't hold you before.
All right, that's the last
It
one
hurt
for tonight.
too much.
Time to go home.
I knew.
The little girl said simply. Standing quietly by the IV pole, Maya adjusted the drip rate of his antibiotics. She didn't say anything to interrupt the moment. She just watched the imposing, battle-hardened military captain hold his daughter like she was the only thing anchoring him to the earth. Jax looked up over Mia's shoulder and caught Maya's eye. There were no walls left, just a quiet, profound gratitude that stretched across the sterile room. Maya offered a small, warm smile in return. 3 weeks later, the ambient temperature of Webern County Medical's pediatric emergency room was still a brisk, unforgiving 66 degrees. Maya Lin was at the main station finalizing a discharge chart at the end of a grueling 14-hour shift when a bright voice cut through the clinical hum.
Maya.
Maya looked up and couldn't stop the immediate genuine smile that broke across her face. Mia was running toward the desk wearing a bright yellow sundress and a massive grin. Behind her, walking with a steady, relaxed gait, was Jax Thorne. The terrifying gray pallor of sepsis was completely gone from his face, replaced by a healthy, sun-weathered warmth. He wore a fitted gray t-shirt and jeans. His left arm was secured in a sleek, articulated orthopedic brace, rather than a bulky sling. But more importantly, the rigid defensive tension that had once locked his shoulders into a permanent state of guard was entirely absent. He looked like a man who had finally put down a crushing weight. Jack stepped up to the counter and set a cardboard cup down next to Maya's keyboard.
Black one sugar, double espresso.
Jack said, his gravelly voice smooth and easy.
I was told it's the mandatory fuel for the end of a trauma shift.
Maya picked up the cup, feeling the heat radiate through the cardboard.
You remembered.
I notice a lot of things, Maya.
Jack said softly, his dark eyes meeting hers with a steady, unwavering warmth.
How is the arm, Captain?
Healing.
Jax replied instinctively, resting his good hand on top of Mia's head.
The infection is cleared. Navy surgeons signed off on my physical therapy plan yesterday. They expect 90% mobility in 6 months. No medical board, no discharge.
He paused, his thumb gently brushing his daughter's hair.
And no custody hearings.
That is exactly what I wanted to hear. Tate.
Maya said softly.
Mia and I had a question for you.
Jax continued leaning slightly against the tall counter. He wasn't hiding behind his military rank or a wall of stoic silence anymore. He was just a father entirely vulnerable and entirely present.
We were wondering if you might be free for dinner tonight. Somewhere a lot warmer than 66 degrees.
Maya looked down at Mia, who was nodding enthusiastically, and then back up at the imposing, battle-hardened man who had trusted her with his life and his greatest fear.
I would love that, Jax.
Maya said. Jax smiled. It was a small, quiet expression, but it changed his entire face. The armor was permanently gone, and in its place was the beginning of a family they had both chosen. If this story moved you, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more emotional journeys. Have you ever had to hide your pain to protect someone you love? Tell me in the comments below, and let me know where in the world you are watching from tonight.